After more than 20 years as a band, can Alter Bridge still release an album that truly defines who they are? Or is this just another solid but familiar chapter in their catalog? That's the question I want to explore today. Before we dive into the album itself, I want to be honest about my personal connection with Alter Bridge. I did not listen to Alter Bridge when they first formed after the breakup of Creed. Back then, I was much more familiar with Creed, like a lot of people were in the early 2000s. Alter Bridge completely flew under my radar for years. I only really discovered them about 5 years ago, long after they were already an established band with a loyal following. The first album I really paid attention to was Pawns and Kings from 2022. I remember liking it, but I also remember not going back to it very often. Since then, I've listened to Alter Bridge on and off. I like the band, I respect what they do, but I would not call myself a die-hard fan. They're not anywhere near my list of favorite bands of all time. And honestly, I think that puts me in a good position for this review. I went into the self-titled album with an open mind, no nostalgia bias, no expectations of what Alter Bridge should sound like, just listening to the music for what it is. So let's talk about it. Alter Bridge is the band's self-titled 8th studio album, released on January 9th, 2026. It arrives 4 years after Pawns and Kings and feels very intentional in both sound and presentation. This album does not try to reinvent the wheel. Instead, it doubles down on what Alter Bridge does best: heavy riffs, big choruses, emotional lyrics, and strong musicianship across the board. Myles once again delivers powerful and melodic vocals, while Mark Tremonti's guitar work is front and center throughout the record. Lyrically, the album focuses on introspection, emotional boundaries, inner conflict, and dealing with toxic relationships. There's a lot of dark subject matter here, but it's often paired with uplifting melodies and massive choruses. This creates a contrast that feels very deliberate. The decision to make a self-titled album was also very intentional. After more than 20 years as a band, Alter Bridge wanted a record that represents their true essence. No fancy concepts, no experimental detours, just a raw, guitar-driven album that reflects who they are right now. A big part of the sound comes from where the album was recorded. Much of the writing, pre-production, and drum tracking took place at Eddie Van Halen's legendary 5150 Studios in California, thanks to their close relationship with Wolfgang Van Halen. That setting clearly had an impact. You can hear rawness and confidence in the performances, especially in the guitar tones and drum work. Now, let's break down this album track by track. The album opens with Silent Divide. This was one of the singles. It makes a strong statement right out of the gate. Mark Tremonti's guitar playing here immediately reminded me of Load-era Metallica. Slow, heavy, thick. The verses have a moody, grinding feel, while the middle section gave me some serious Alice in Chains vibes. Myles sounds great, as always, and the breakdown around the 3-minute mark is one of the highlights of the song. It's a strong mix of post-grunge and metal, and a very confident opener. After this is Rue Today. This track keeps the slow and heavy approach going, but adds a more mystical and melodic atmosphere. The hooks are memorable, and Tremonti uses some really cool harmonics and clean guitar tones here. There's a sense of restraint on the song that works in its favor. It's heavy, but it breathes. A solid early album track. Power Down is one of the heaviest songs on the entire album. The guitar riffs border on thrash metal at times, with fast rhythms and aggressive picking. Tremonti is absolutely ripping here. Myles delivers one of his most powerful vocal performances on the record, and even with all that heaviness, the band still manages to sneak in some strong hooks. This is a standout track if you like Alter Bridge at their most aggressive. Trust in Me is a very interesting song. It starts with a slow, heavy, harmonized guitar riffs, but the verses feel moodier and more reflective, almost like early 2000s post-grunge. The drumming really stood out to me here, especially the tribal-style rhythms. Towards the end, the guitars get brighter and the song almost shifts into a retro progressive rock vibe. It's a great example of how Alter Bridge can blend different styles without losing their identity. Disregarded is one of the most unique tracks in the album. The guitar tone sounds extremely low, almost like a down-tuned or a 7-string setup. The opening riffs actually reminded me of Meshuggah. There are also hints of nu metal, even Slipknot here, but the song still follows a classic Alter Bridge melodic structure. It's heavy, experimental for them, and surprisingly catchy. Tested and Able is another heavy track with strong nu metal influences. I've seen comparisons to Seven Dust, and I can definitely hear that. This is also one of the songs where Mark Tremonti takes on vocal duties, and he does a solid job. The riffs are thick and aggressive, making this one of the album's heavier highlights. What Lies Within was another single, and it sounds like classic Alter Bridge. It's more melodic and alternative compared to the previous tracks, with a big chorus and a more accessible structure. It doesn't push many boundaries, but it does what it sets out to do very well. Hang On By a Thread is the first true ballad on the album, and it comes after a very heavy front half. Musically, it leans towards a country rock and alternative sound with softer guitar tones. It's not a bad song, but for me, this is where the album loses a bit of momentum. I definitely preferred most of the songs on the first half of the record. Scales Are Falling is one of the standout tracks on the album. It's dark, atmospheric, very dynamic with lots of peaks and valleys. The guitar riffs have a very classic heavy metal feel, and Mark Tremonti delivers one of his best solos on the entire record. The solo even has some psychedelic vibes to it. The song feels different from a lot of the album, and that's why it works so well. Playing Aces was actually the first song I heard from this album, and it remains one of the most memorable tracks here. It's upbeat, very classic Alter Bridge, and firmly rooted in post-grunge. The mix of heaviness and melody works perfectly, and the pounding drum beat keeps the energy high. The next track is called What Are You Waiting For? After a few more alternative-leaning tracks, the song brings back a heavier grunge sound. The guitar riffs once again reminded me of Alice in Chains. It's a strong track overall, even if it's not one of the absolute highlights. Slave to Master closes the album, and it is a 9-minute epic. It starts with atmospheric guitars and melodic vocals before gradually building into heavier metal riffs mixed with grunge elements. There are a lot of cool ideas woven throughout the song, and while it doesn't reinvent the long-form Alter Bridge closer, it does a good job of wrapping up the album on a strong note. So can Alter Bridge still release an album that truly defines who they are? By the end of this record, I'd say yes. This self-titled album feels like a confident statement of identity. It doesn't chase trends, and it doesn't try to surprise you with radical changes. Instead, it focuses on strong songwriting, heavy riffs, emotional lyrics, and excellent musicianship. I personally like the first half of the album more than the second half. The ballad Hang By a Thread slowed things down a bit too much for me, but the album recovered towards the end and closed strong. Overall, it's a very solid release from Alter Bridge. My final score, 8 out of 10. If you enjoyed this review and want to hear more thoughts on Alter Bridge, make sure you check out my full review of Pawns and Kings from 2022, which should be appearing on the screen right now. If you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what you think of Alter Bridge's self-titled album. Is it one of their best records, or do you prefer some of their earlier albums? Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.